Sometimes the bravest decision a person can make is walking away. For 3 long years, Hana Okafor worked tirelessly at one of Seoul's most powerful tech companies. Late nights, endless meetings, unfair expectations. Rain poured steadily against the tall glass windows of Horizon Group's headquarters in Seoul. The city lights shimmered through the storm, turning the skyline into a blur of silver and gold. Inside the building, however, the atmosphere was far colder. Employees moved quickly through the halls, whispering in low voices, careful not to disturb the man at the top of the company. The CEO, Kang Junwoo. At just 32 years old, he had built Horizon Group into one of Korea's most powerful technology empires. Newspapers called him a genius. Investors called him unstoppable. But inside the company, employees had another word for him: untouchable. Junwoo was known for his sharp mind, impossible standards, and a work schedule that allowed no room for mistakes or emotions. And for 3 years, one person had lived in the shadow of that pressure every single day: Hana Okafor. Hana stood outside the CEO's office, her hands gripping a white envelope. Her heart beat loudly in her chest. 3 years. 3 years of sleepless nights. 3 years of answering calls at midnight, rescheduling meetings across time zones, fixing problems before they could reach his desk. She had memorized his schedule better than her own life. She knew when he liked his coffee, when he preferred silence, when investors were lying to him. And yet, in all that time, she had never once heard him say her name. Hana inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "This is the right decision," she whispered. Through the glass door, she could see him sitting behind his massive desk. Kang Junwoo. He was reviewing a stack of financial reports, his expression as calm and unreadable as always. The rain tapped against the windows behind him like a slow countdown. Hana knocked lightly. "Come in." His voice was firm, deep, and distracted. She stepped inside the office. The room felt larger than usual tonight. Cold. Silent. Junwoo didn't look up immediately. His pen moved across the page as he signed another document. Only after several seconds did he speak again. "Is there something urgent?" His tone was neutral, professional, like he was speaking to any other employee. Hana swallowed the small knot forming in her throat. "Mr. Kang, may I have a moment of your time?" He finally lifted his eyes. Sharp, observant, unreadable. For a brief second, his gaze studied her. Then he leaned back slightly in his chair. "You have 1 minute. 1 minute." 3 years of effort, reduced to 60 seconds. Hana almost laughed at the irony. But instead, she stepped forward and placed the envelope gently on his desk. Junwoo glanced at it. His brow lowered slightly. "What is this?" Hana straightened her shoulders. The nervousness that had followed her all day slowly faded, replaced by a calm sense of clarity. "It's my resignation." For the first time since she entered the office, the room became completely still. Junwoo looked at the envelope again, then back at her. His expression didn't change. "Effective when?" "Immediately." The rain outside seemed to grow louder. Junwoo tapped his pen lightly against the desk, considering the situation like a simple business decision. "You understand there are ongoing projects you're responsible for?" "Yes. And several meetings scheduled through next week. I've prepared transition documents for the next assistant."
Her voice was calm, prepared.
She had thought about this moment for weeks, maybe months. Junwoo studied her carefully now, as if trying to calculate something that didn't quite fit. Why? It was a simple question, but the answer carried 3 years of exhaustion behind it. Hana hesitated. Then she spoke honestly. "For 3 years, I gave everything I had to this job." Her fingers tightened slightly together. "But somewhere along the way, I stopped having a life outside this office." Junwoo remained silent. "I missed birthdays," she continued quietly. "Family calls, holidays, even sleep." Her voice didn't accuse him. It simply stated the truth. "And I realized something recently." Junwoo's eyes narrowed slightly. "What did you realize?" Hana smiled faintly. That no matter how hard I worked, I was just another employee in this building. The words were soft, but they landed heavily. So I decided, she said gently, that it's time I choose myself. Silence filled the room. The CEO of one of Korea's largest corporations stared at the resignation letter for several seconds. Then he opened it. His eyes quickly scanned the page. Professional.
Clean.
Efficient. Exactly the kind of work he expected from her. Finally, he placed it back on the desk. Accepted. One word.
Just like that.
No argument. No attempt to stop her. Hana nodded politely. She had expected nothing else. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Kong. She gave a respectful bow, then turned toward the door. Her heels clicked softly across the marble floor. Each step felt strangely lighter. Freedom waited on the other side of that door. But just before she reached it, Junwoo spoke again. Miss Okafor. Hana stopped. It was the first time he had ever said her name. She turned slightly. Yes, sir? For a brief moment, it looked like he might say something more. But whatever thought crossed his mind disappeared just as quickly. Ensure the transition documents are sent to HR. His voice had returned to its usual cold professionalism. Of course. She nodded once more. Then she left. The door closed quietly behind her. And for the first time in 3 years, Hana Okafor walked away from Horizon Group.
Free.
But inside the office, Kang Junwoo remained staring at the resignation letter on his desk. Something about the moment felt wrong. He couldn't explain it. He had accepted dozens of resignations before. Employees came and went all the time. So, why did this one feel different? Outside, the elevator doors closed around Hana as she descended toward the lobby. Inside the CEO's office, Kang Junwoo finally leaned back in his chair. And for reasons he didn't yet understand, he suddenly felt like something important had just walked out of his life. That night, the rain over Seoul finally began to slow, leaving the city glowing beneath the streetlights. High above it all, on the top floor of a luxury penthouse overlooking the Han River, Kang Junwoo sat alone in his private office. Normally, this was where he finished the last of his work for the day. Financial reports, acquisition plans, investor briefings. His life was a constant stream of numbers and decisions worth millions. Tonight should have been no different. But his laptop had been open for nearly 10 minutes, and he hadn't read a single line. Instead, his mind kept drifting back to one small white envelope sitting on his desk earlier that evening. A resignation letter. From Hana Okafor. Junwoo leaned back slightly in his chair, staring out at the glittering city skyline. Cars moved like streams of light along the highways below, and distant sirens echoed faintly through the night. Yet the quiet inside his apartment felt unusually heavy. A soft knock came from the door. Come in. His assistant, Mr. Park, stepped inside with a tablet in hand. Sir, tomorrow's investor meeting has been moved to 9 in the morning instead of 10. Junwoo nodded absent-mindedly. Fine. Mr. Park waited a moment, sensing something unusual. The CEO was rarely distracted. Is there anything else you need tonight, sir? Junwoo hesitated. Then he asked a question that surprised even himself. Miss Okafor cleared her desk today? Mr. Park blinked slightly. Yes, sir. Shortly after leaving your office. And HR processed her resignation? They're working on it now. Junwoo tapped his finger lightly against the armrest of his chair. When did she start working here? 3 years ago, Mr. Park replied. She replaced your previous executive secretary. 3 years. Junwoo frowned faintly. 3 years was a long time in the fast-moving world of Horizon Group. Most assistants barely lasted 1. How was her performance? Mr. Park looked surprised by the question. Excellent, sir. She handled your schedule, travel arrangements, board communications, nearly everything. He paused before adding. Many department heads said the company ran more smoothly because of her. Junwoo turned his gaze back toward the city lights. If that was true, why had he barely noticed her? He tried to picture her clearly in his mind. Dark hair, calm voice, always standing beside the door during meetings, always ready with the next document before he even asked for it. She had been there every single day. Quiet, efficient, invisible. Junwoo suddenly realized something unsettling. For 3 years, Hana Okafor had been one of the most important people in his daily life. And he didn't even know what her favorite coffee was. A silence settled between him and Mr. Park. Finally, the assistant cleared his throat. "Sir, should I finalize the search for a replacement?" Junwoo didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked another question. "Where does she live?" Mr. Park hesitated. "I believe in Mapo District." Junwoo stood up slowly from his chair. The decision forming in his mind felt unusual, impulsive, almost irrational. But for the first time in a long while, work wasn't the most important thing in his thoughts. "Find the exact address." Mr. Park looked confused. "Sir?" Junwoo grabbed his coat from the chair beside him. "Tonight." His assistant blinked in disbelief. "You're going to see her?" Junwoo paused at the door. For a man who always had precise answers, this time he didn't. "I'm going to understand something." Because for the first time since becoming CEO, Kang Junwoo couldn't shake the feeling that he had just let the most valuable person in his company walk away. And he wasn't sure why. But he was about to find out. For the first time in 3 years, Hana Okafor woke up without the sharp vibration of her alarm ringing at 5 in the morning. No rushing through traffic. No endless calls. No urgent emails waiting before sunrise. Just quiet. Soft sunlight slipped through the curtains of her small apartment in Mapo District, gently warming the room. Hana lay still in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling as a strange feeling settled over her. Freedom. A small smile slowly appeared on her face. Yesterday had been the last time she walked through the towering glass doors of Horizon Group. The last time she rushed down those polished hallways. The last time she stood outside Kang Junwoo's office waiting for instructions that never seemed to end. For years, her entire life had revolved around that building. But now, it was over. Hana stretched her arms and sat up, letting out a quiet breath. "I really did it," she murmured to herself. Her apartment was simple, but cozy. A small living room with a worn but comfortable couch, a tiny kitchen by the window, and shelves filled with books she had never had time to read. For the first time in years, she had time. Real time. She made herself a cup of tea and stood by the window, watching the city slowly come alive. People hurried down the streets below. Shops opened their doors. The normal rhythm of life continued. But for Hana, everything felt different. She remembered how terrified she had been when she printed her resignation letter the night before. 3 years of stability, suddenly gone. Yet strangely, she didn't regret it. Not even a little. Her phone buzzed on the table. A message from her mother. "How did work go yesterday?" Hana smiled gently before replying. "I quit." A moment later, her phone rang immediately. "Hana, what do you mean you quit?" her mother exclaimed from the other end. Hana laughed softly. "I mean exactly that." Her mother sighed dramatically. "That was a powerful company. You worked so hard to get that job." "I know," Hana said gently. "But I worked so hard that I forgot how to live." There was a pause. Then her mother's voice softened. "Are you happy?" Hana looked around her quiet apartment. For the first time in years, she felt calm. "Yes," she said. "I think I am." After ending the call, Hana sat down on the couch and began making a small list in her notebook. Things she wanted to do. Places she wanted to visit. Dreams she had postponed for too long. Maybe she would start her own consulting business. Maybe she would travel. Maybe she would simply rest for a while. The possibilities felt endless. She had just finished writing when something outside caught her attention. A car. A sleek black luxury sedan had slowly pulled up in front of her building. Hana frowned slightly. Cars like that didn't usually appear in her quiet neighborhood. The engine stopped. The driver stepped out and opened the back door. A tall man in a dark coat emerged. Even from her window, Hana could recognize the confident posture immediately. Her heart skipped. That can't be. She moved closer to the window, disbelief growing in her chest. The man adjusted his coat and looked up at the apartment building. It was him. Kang Junwoo. Her former boss, the billionaire CEO of Horizon Group, standing outside her home. Hana blinked in confusion. Why would someone like him be here? Before she could even process the thought, her doorbell rang. The sound echoed through her quiet apartment. Hana froze. For several seconds, she simply stared at the door. Her mind raced through possibilities. Did something happen at the company? Was there a problem with her resignation? Or had she forgotten something important at work? The doorbell rang again. Hana slowly walked toward the door, her heart beating faster with every step. She placed her hand on the handle, took a deep breath, and opened it. Standing there, under the soft morning sunlight, was Kang Junwoo, dressed in an expensive black coat, his expression calm but unusually serious. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Hana's eyes widened. Mr. Kang? The billionaire CEO looked at her quietly. Then he said something she never expected to hear. Good morning, Miss Okafor. He paused slightly. May I come in? Hana stood frozen at the doorway. For a moment, she wondered if she was still dreaming. Because the last person she ever expected to see standing outside her apartment was Kang Junwoo, the powerful CEO who barely noticed anyone. And yet here he was, in front of her small apartment, on a quiet street far from the glass towers of Horizon Group. Hana blinked, trying to gather her thoughts. Mr. Kang, what are you doing here? Junwoo stood calmly, his tall figure framed by the morning sunlight behind him. His dark coat and polished shoes looked strangely out of place in the modest hallway of her building. For the first time since she had known him, he seemed slightly uncertain. I came to see you. The answer was simple, but it made even less sense. Hana stared at him. You came to see me? Yes. A small silence settled between them. Hana glanced around the hallway, half expecting one of her neighbors to appear and witness the bizarre situation. The billionaire CEO of Horizon Group, waiting outside her door. Finally, she sighed softly and stepped aside. You should come in before the neighbors start asking questions. Junwoo nodded once and walked inside. As he entered, his sharp eyes quietly observed the apartment. It was nothing like the places he was used to. The living room was small but warm, filled with soft lighting and shelves of books. A simple couch sat near the window, and a small wooden table held a steaming cup of tea. Everything about the space felt peaceful, personal,
Real.
a sharp contrast to the cold luxury of his own penthouse. Hana closed the door behind him and turned back. So, she said cautiously, why exactly is the CEO of Horizon Group standing in my living room? Junwoo removed his coat slowly and draped it over the back of a chair. For a moment, he seemed to search for the right words, which was unusual for a man known for making billion-dollar decisions without hesitation. You resigned yesterday, he said finally. Hana crossed her arms lightly.
Yes.
I remember. You shouldn't have. The words made her eyebrows lift. Excuse me? Junwoo looked directly at her. You were essential to the company. Hana let out a small laugh. That's interesting. His brow lowered slightly. Why? Because yesterday when I resigned you didn't say anything like that. Silence. The truth hung in the air between them. Junwoo's expression hardened slightly, not in anger, but in quiet realization. You didn't ask me to stay, Hana continued. You didn't ask why I was leaving. You simply accepted it. Her voice wasn't bitter, just honest. Junwoo lowered his gaze briefly, considering her words. You're right, he admitted. Hana was slightly surprised by how easily he said it. The man who was famous for never admitting mistakes had just done exactly that. She gestured toward the couch. Well, you're already here. You might as well sit. Junwoo sat down carefully, his posture still straight and composed. Hana sat across from him. For a moment, neither spoke. It felt strange seeing him here, without the polished boardroom, the executives, the endless pressure of corporate life. Just two people in a quiet apartment. Finally, Hana broke the silence. Mr. Kang, if you came all this way to convince me to return to work, you should know something. Junwoo looked up. I'm not coming back. He studied her face carefully. I didn't come here to convince you. That answer caught her off guard. Then why are you here? Junwoo leaned slightly forward, resting his hands together. For a brief moment, the confident CEO seemed almost thoughtful. I realized something after you left yesterday. Hana waited. I've accepted many resignations before. His voice was calm. But yours felt different. Hana tilted her head slightly. Different how? Junwoo hesitated. He wasn't used to explaining feelings he barely understood himself. Finally, he said quietly, when you walked out of my office, that felt like something important had just disappeared. The words surprised even him. Hana stared at him in disbelief. Mr. Kong, are you saying you came here because you suddenly realized I mattered to the company? Yes. She sighed softly. That's a little late, don't you think? He didn't argue. Instead, he looked around the small apartment again before speaking. You seem calmer today. Hana glanced toward the window. I am. Why? Because for the first time in 3 years, my life doesn't belong to Horizon Group. The honesty in her voice was impossible to ignore. Junwoo sat quietly for a moment. Then he said something that made her look back at him immediately. I think I made a mistake. Hana blinked. You think? He nodded once. I underestimated someone important. Hana studied him carefully now. Because the man sitting in front of her didn't sound like the cold CEO she used to work for. He sounded like someone trying to understand something for the first time. She leaned back slightly. So, what happens now? Junwoo looked directly at her. That depends. On what? On whether you're willing to hear what I came here to say. The room suddenly felt quieter. Outside, the city continued its busy morning. But inside that small apartment, something unexpected was beginning. And neither of them fully realized yet just how much their lives were about to change. For a moment, the room was completely silent. The distant noise of cars outside drifted faintly through the window, but inside Hana's small living room, everything felt still. Hana studied the man sitting across from her. Kong Junwoo looked very different here than he did inside the towering glass walls of Horizon Group. There was no long conference table between them. No assistants rushing in with urgent documents. No executives watching his every word. Just a simple couch. 2 cups of tea. And the quiet honesty of a conversation that should have happened long ago. Hana folded her hands together. Well, she said calmly, you said you came here to say something. I'm listening. Junwoo leaned slightly forward, his elbows resting lightly on his knees. His usual confidence seemed tempered by careful thought. For 3 years, he began, you managed my entire schedule. Hana nodded. Yes. You handled board meetings, investor calls, international travel, negotiations. Yes. And during all that time, he continued slowly, I never once asked if you were okay. Hana didn't answer immediately. Instead, she gave a small, understanding smile. That's because you were busy running a billion-dollar company. That's not an excuse. His response came quickly, surprising her. Junwoo's eyes held a rare seriousness now. A company only works because of the people inside it. And yet, I treated those people like numbers. Hana tilted her head slightly. That realization came pretty late. Yes, he admitted. Another quiet moment passed. Hana looked down at the steam rising gently from her cup of tea. You know, she said softly, when I first got that job, I was really excited. Junwoo listened carefully. I thought working for someone like you would be inspiring. Inspiring? Yes. She laughed faintly. You were the youngest CEO in the company's history. Every business magazine was writing about you. Her eyes lifted back to him. I thought I would learn so much. And did you? He asked. Oh, I did, she replied. I learned how to work 16-hour days. Junwoo winced slightly. I learned how to solve problems before anyone else noticed them. She took a sip of her tea. And I learned how invisible someone can feel, even when they're standing right next to the most powerful person in the room. The words were gentle, but they struck deeply. Junwoo exhaled slowly. I didn't see it. No, Hana agreed. You didn't. For a moment, the CEO of Horizon Group simply sat there, absorbing the weight of that truth. Then he asked quietly, "Why didn't you say something sooner?" Hana shrugged lightly. "Because I believed that if I worked hard enough, eventually you would notice. And when I didn't," she smiled again, though there was sadness behind it. "Eventually I realized something." "What?" "You can't wait forever for someone else to see your worth." Junwoo nodded slowly. "That's fair." Another silence passed, but this one felt different. Less tense. More thoughtful. Junwoo finally looked around the apartment again.
The books.
The soft lighting. The quiet simplicity of the space. "You seem happier here." Hana followed his gaze. "This place may be small, but it's mine." Junwoo nodded once. "I can see that." Hana leaned back into the couch. "So tell me something honestly, Mr. Kong." "Go ahead. Why did it suddenly bother you that I left?" The question hung in the air. Junwoo took a moment before answering. "Because the truth wasn't simple. When you walked out of my office yesterday," he said slowly, "I realized something strange." Hana waited. "My entire day fell apart." She raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Meetings were delayed. Documents were missing. 3 executives argued about a schedule you normally handled in seconds." He gave a faint, almost amused exhale. "It was chaos." Hana crossed her arms slightly. "So, you came here because the office became inconvenient." Junwoo shook his head immediately.
No.
He leaned forward again. "I came because I realized the company depended on you far more than I ever acknowledged." Hana stared at him carefully. "You're saying Horizon Group can't function without me?" "I'm saying," he corrected, "that I was foolish enough to think it could." The honesty in his voice made her pause. For the first time since he arrived, Hana saw something unfamiliar in Kong Junwoo's expression.
Respect.
Real respect. Finally, he reached into his briefcase and placed a thin folder on the table between them. Hana glanced at it. "What's that?" Junwoo slid it gently toward her. "A solution." Hana frowned slightly. "What kind of solution?" He met her eyes. "One that might change both of our futures." And suddenly, the quiet conversation in that small apartment was about to take a very unexpected turn. Hana looked down at the thin folder resting on the table between them. A solution. That was the word Kong Junwoo had used. She hesitated for a moment before picking it up. The paper felt heavier than it should have, as if whatever was written inside carried more weight than a simple document. Slowly, she opened it. Her eyes scanned the first page. Then they widened slightly. She looked up at him. "This has to be a joke." Junwoo remained calm. "It isn't." Hana flipped through the pages again, making sure she had read it correctly. The title at the top of the contract was unmistakable. Director of Strategic Operations, Horizon Group. Her heart skipped. "That position reports directly to the CEO," she said quietly. "Yes." "And you're offering it to me?" "Yes." Hana leaned back against the couch, stunned. "Yesterday I was your executive secretary," she said slowly. "And today you want to make me one of the highest-ranking directors in the company?" Junwoo nodded once. "You already understand how the company works. That doesn't mean I'm qualified to run strategic operations. You've been doing it unofficially for 3 years." Hana frowned. "That's not the same thing." Junwoo stood and walked slowly toward the window, looking out at the busy streets below. "When executives couldn't coordinate their schedules, you solved it. When investors demanded changes at the last minute, you reorganized the meetings. When departments blamed each other for delays, you quietly found solutions." He turned back toward her. "I've watched you solve problems that entire teams couldn't handle." Hana shook her head. "You watched me schedule meetings. I watched you manage the company without authority." The words hung in the air. Hana didn't know how to respond. For 3 years she had felt invisible inside Horizon Group. Yet somehow, this man had been observing more than she realized. She looked back at the contract. "This position comes with a massive responsibility." "Yes. And every executive in that building will question why I'm there." "They will," he agreed. "They'll think it's favoritism." "They might. And if I fail?" she asked quietly. Junwoo walked back toward the couch and sat across from her again. Then it will be my mistake. Hana studied his face carefully. You're willing to take that risk? Yes. Why? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he folded his hands together, considering his words carefully. Because leadership isn't about surrounding yourself with people who already have impressive titles. Hana waited. It's about recognizing talent before everyone else does. He leaned slightly forward. And I should have recognized yours a long time ago. Hana felt a small wave of emotion rise in her chest. For years she had wanted to hear something like that. But now that she finally had, it felt almost overwhelming. She closed the folder slowly. This is a big decision. I know. And you came all the way here just to give me this offer? Yes. Hana looked at him carefully. There's something else. Junwoo raised an eyebrow slightly. What do you mean? You could have offered this yesterday in your office, she said. But you didn't. He remained silent. So why now? For the first time since arriving at her apartment, Kang Junwoo seemed slightly unsure. Finally, he spoke quietly. Because yesterday, I was thinking like a CEO. And today, he said, I'm trying to think like a human being. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Hana stared at the contract again. Her mind raced with possibilities. Returning to Horizon Group would mean stepping back into the world she had just escaped. The long hours, the pressure, the constant expectations. But this time it wouldn't be the same. She wouldn't be invisible. She would have power, a voice, a chance to change the very system that once exhausted her. Still, she wasn't ready to answer yet. She looked back at him. You know, she said thoughtfully, accepting this job would change my entire life. Junwoo nodded. I'm aware. And it would change yours too. That made him pause.
How?
Hana gave a small smile. Because if I take this position, I won't be your assistant anymore. He held her gaze. I know. I'll challenge your decisions. Good. I'll disagree with you in meetings. I expect it. And if something is wrong in the company, I'll say it directly. Junwoo's expression softened slightly. That's exactly why I want you there. A quiet moment passed between them. Finally, Hana closed the folder and placed it back on the table. Well, she said calmly, you certainly know how to make a dramatic job offer. Junwoo allowed the faintest hint of a smile. I've been told that before. Hana crossed her arms thoughtfully. Give me some time to think about it. Of course. He stood and picked up his coat. But I should warn you about something, he added. Hana looked up. What? If you say yes. He paused briefly. Everything is going to change. Hana smiled slightly. Maybe that's exactly what both of us need. And as Kang Junwoo walked toward the door, neither of them realized that the decision Hana was about to make would soon shake the entire leadership of Horizon Group. 1 week later, the headquarters of Horizon Group buzzed with unusual tension. Employees whispered in hallways. Phones rang more often than usual. And inside the executive conference room on the 35th floor, several senior directors sat around the long glass table, staring at the agenda in front of them. At the top of the document was a single announcement. Introduction of the new Director of Strategic Operations. One of the executives leaned toward another and whispered quietly. Do you know who it is? No idea, the other replied. I heard the CEO personally chose them. That's unusual. Very unusual. Kang Junwoo rarely surprised the board with sudden decisions. Every appointment in Horizon Group was normally discussed weeks in advance. But this time, even the senior directors had been left in the dark. At exactly 9 o'clock, the conference room doors opened. The quiet conversation stopped immediately. Kang Junwoo walked in first, calm and composed as always. His dark suit was perfectly pressed, and his expression revealed nothing about the tension in the room. He took his usual seat at the head of the table. Good morning. The executives greeted him politely. Good morning, sir. Junwoo glanced briefly around the room before speaking again. Today we're welcoming a new member to the executive leadership team. Several directors exchanged curious looks. One of them leaned forward. Sir, May we ask who the appointment is? Junwoo simply nodded toward the door. Right on cue, it opened again. Hana Okafor stepped inside. For a brief second, the entire room froze. Because every single person there recognized her. The woman who used to stand quietly outside the CEO's office. The executive secretary who managed schedules and organized meetings. Now walking into the boardroom as an equal. Whispers erupted instantly. Is that Miss Okafor? Wait, what's happening? She used to work in administration. Hana could feel dozens of surprised eyes watching her as she walked toward the empty seat beside the CEO. Her heart beat steadily, but her posture remained calm. She had thought carefully about this decision. And 3 days earlier, she had given Kang Junwoo her answer. Yes. Not because of the title, not because of the money, but because she believed she could help change the very system that once pushed her away. Junwoo gestured toward the chair beside him. Please take your seat. Hana nodded and sat down. The room remained filled with disbelief. Finally, one of the older directors spoke carefully. Mr. Kang, with all respect, Miss Okafor was previously your secretary. The room grew even quieter. Everyone waited for the CEO's response. Junwoo didn't hesitate. Yes. The director frowned slightly. And now she's being appointed as Director of Strategic Operations? That's correct. Another executive leaned forward. Sir, with respect, that position oversees multiple departments. Junwoo's voice remained calm. I'm aware. A third executive added cautiously. Some people may question whether she has the necessary experience. Before Junwoo could answer, Hana spoke.
Her voice was steady.
That's a fair concern. The room turned toward her. Hana met their gazes confidently. For 3 years, I worked inside this company. Not in a boardroom, but close enough to see how decisions are made. She folded her hands on the table. I've watched departments struggle to communicate. I've seen projects delayed because teams refuse to cooperate. The executives listened carefully now. And I've seen talented employees burn out because the system values efficiency more than people. The room fell silent. Hana continued calmly. I accepted this position because I believe Horizon Group can become stronger by fixing those problems. She looked around the table. I don't expect instant trust from all of you. That honesty surprised several directors. But I promise you something, she added. I will work just as hard in this role as I did when I was the person scheduling your meetings. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Junwoo finally broke the silence. That's exactly why she's here. He looked around the room. Horizon Group has grown quickly. But growth often hides problems. His voice became slightly firmer. Miss Okafor understands those problems better than anyone in this building. Some executives still looked uncertain, but others nodded thoughtfully. The meeting continued, moving on to other business matters. Yet the real conversation throughout the building that day wasn't about quarterly profits or new projects. It was about Hana, the secretary who became a director. Employees across the company whispered in disbelief. But something else changed too. For the first time, many people felt a quiet sense of hope. Because if someone like Hana could rise to leadership, maybe the company was finally changing. Later that evening, as the sun set over Seoul, Hana stepped out of the Horizon Group building. The day had been long, but strangely not exhausting. She stood for a moment outside the entrance, watching the golden light reflect against the glass towers. Behind her, the doors opened again. Kang Junwoo stepped out. First day as director, he said calmly. Hana smiled slightly. And it was only mildly terrifying. That's a good start. They walked slowly toward the parking area. After a moment, Hana glanced at him. You know, everyone in that meeting probably thinks you've lost your mind. Junwoo gave a faint smile. That wouldn't be the first time. She laughed softly. Then she looked back at the building. You really believe I can do this? Junwoo stopped walking and turned toward her. His answer came without hesitation. I wouldn't have knocked on your door if I didn't. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The evening air was calm, the city lights slowly flickering on around them. Finally, Hana smiled. Well, Mr. Kang. Yes. Let's make sure your gamble pays off. Junwoo nodded once. Because the moment she had said yes to that offer, something far bigger than a promotion had begun. A new partnership, a new leadership, and perhaps the beginning of something neither of them had expected when she first walked out of his office. Sometimes, the most important changes in life begin with something simple: a resignation letter and a knock on the door.